This wonderful tower on the French Naval Museum in Toulon on the Mediterranean coast is a great example for this technique of drawing architecture in an easy, quick and effective technique style. I'm using 0.3 millimeter pen, and this took me just over 15 minutes in real time. So you're actually watching this only 1¼ times drawing speed. So this is probably one of the videos that's closest to me actually drawing in real time. And the heart of this technique, as is a very frequent technique I use, is to draw the effect of what we see, the effect of the architecture, not the actual architecture. It's the same principle I would apply to a field of flowers, to a crowd of people, to bricks on a wall, to leaves on a tree, whatever. But it applies just as much with architecture. So I'm wanting to draw the effect, not the detail. Now, with this particular style, I want to have enough lines always to create a three-dimensional effect. One of the problems with brisk, quick drawings is often they do look a bit overly simplified and can be a bit cartoon-like. So I want to have enough lines to give a sense of depth. So we're slightly looking up under these cornices. So I want to make sure I've got a depth line as well as the lines that indicate the front-on view of the ledges. And because there's some complex layering backwards on the corners, I can represent that simply by drawing enough lines without working hard necessarily to align where they're at. Now, drawing on a relatively small scale is a great idea if we don't have much time and we want to do a fairly quick gestural sketch. Because it's a smaller size, it's easier to simplify it in some ways, but the dangers of not simplifying it enough are greater, because if we draw the detail too large, it's going to be obvious. And that's always the concern drawing architecture such as this very briskly, is that because we end up focusing on the detail more, it's easy to try and draw more of it. And that invariably means we draw it oversized for the rest of the object, because it's really important in drawing, well, architecture in general, but if we have to narrow the things we focus on when we're drawing it quickly, getting the proportions as close as possible to our reference is really important. Getting our proportions as accurate as possible. And along with that is, I think, achieving symmetry where symmetry is called for. Where things are centered, we want them to look centered. Where things are an equal distance apart from the edges or from windows, we want to make ours look equal distances apart. If the door's in the center, we want it to look in the center. So that's a really important focus, because those errors stand out. Whereas if some of the detail isn't quite right for some of the other areas, it's not going to be obvious if people aren't comparing with our reference. And if you're finding this helpful, please hit the like button. Please leave a comment. Tell me, is this a style of drawing you use or you'd like to use? Have you ever thought of drawing the effect of detail rather than the detail as applying to architecture and to buildings such as this? Or do you think of it more for trees and grass and foliage and natural objects? One, I think, really important thing drawing briskly is to hold the pen loosely. Because if we're clenching the pen, we will invariably move it more slowly. We're going to get a less straight line, and it's going to start to have a laboured look. And because the pen is lingering on the paper for longer, more ink will flow, and so we will get darker lines. I do think with this, I probably used a pen that was too dark. If I were redrawing this, I would use my 0.2 millimeter pen rather than my 0.3 to get a slightly finer look. It's a little bit heavy for what I would like. And you can see that detail under the clock, the face and the the swaggins of the flags, I think they are, and some probably victory leaves are just a bit large for the scale of the building. So we have this filigree cupola on top with the bell in it. Again, I draw the bell too large. It was interesting to work out how I would do this. I decided to go up from the bell though, to make sure that there was room to fit everything before the top of the tower. I didn't want to start with this because I thought it was going to be hard to get the scale correct. I thought I was better off establishing the size, the scale of the actual tower, and then use that as a reference for this. Just checking the filigree here. This probably would have taken me a few minutes longer for observation with this tower, but I did actually paint this scene as a gift for a family member many years ago, so I was more familiar with how it looked. I thought it was a wonderful effect, the light and airy sense, and yet still being a covering for the top of the tower. I think this was built in the 1600s. And so after the cupola on the top, there is this base that supports it all. It's important to try and understand the structure, to try and see what the fundamental support lines are, quite apart from the decorations, the little scroll work effects. Because with something such as this, we don't just want to draw random messy lines. If possible, if we can draw the fundamental lines, the corner of the structure, maybe the midpoints, whatever the main supports are and the angles they're at, if we can capture those, then we can just add the effect of the little curly scroll pieces of iron. So that's what I'm doing here now. And of course, some of them pass across the face of the clock, of the face of the bell. I almost missed that. And again, the effect of this is a bit black for the reference using the pen. I should have at least switched to a 0.2 or even a 0.1 just for this metalwork on top. And then there is a surrounding fence, so to speak. A low decorative railing that goes around it, which I wanted to get as well. But now we go back to the base of the tower. I hope you have a go drawing this. Of course, you will find this reference photo on my channel community page. So it's a bit easier now. The base is slightly wider than the upper section. And these are the details it's important to notice at the start. Have you noticed that we're not looking at the tower front on? We're looking at it slightly at an angle. We're looking down the left-hand side a little bit more than we see around the right-hand side. And that makes a big difference when we put the side parts, sorry about that, I just bumped everything. It makes a difference when we do the wraparound section of that ledge on the left-hand side, but we don't have the same effect on the right-hand side. When objects are nearly symmetrical, they're nearly being seen straight on, it's a big mistake to presume that it's all going to look the same on both sides. It is actually quite significant. And seeing more of the cornice on the left-hand side wrapping around the side is partly what creates the effect significantly that we're not looking straight on. And the fact that the horizontal lines, in inverted commas, do actually slope downwards slightly because the tower is sloping away from us as it moves from left to right. So now I'm putting enough lines in here to allow for the 3 dimensions and some of the decoration. One of the problems drawing a scene such as this at this scale though, and this is why we need to consider the thickness of our line, is that if the line is too thick, it actually means we can't get the effect of what we're wanting, because when we look at the reference, the thickness of the line, so to speak, around various elements of it, the columns or the clock, whatever, they're a line, but they're a line that's way finer than we could ever draw. So even with a finer pen than this, we're still going to get a heavier line, and all these lines stacked up horizontally create width. And if we're not careful, then this width will start to increase the width of what we're doing and change the proportion. So it's always a challenge. This balustrade, again, I'm trying to draw the effect of it, or I will be in a moment. Now this door finished up being too wide, and so it's a bit dark, the effect. But that was partly because I positioned it too far to the right, and so to make it look more symmetrical, I just put some lines in to widen it slightly towards the left. So sometimes if we've made a mistake, it's worth working out, can I correct this in a way that's not going to be correct, but will end up looking better than a door that's not symmetrically placed but is obviously meant to be. And so just finishing, balustrades are a really important element to practice drawing, and to draw them at different scales, different distances, and the different effects that different balusters create. I do have a half-finished video somewhere on drawing balustrades. I particularly with this though wanted to be able to put the darker values of the door in the gaps between several of the balusters in the front, because I thought that created a really nice effect. That did create the sense of the railing of the balustrade coming forward, which I thought was nice. And then this drawing's pretty much done. G'day, I'm Stephen Travers. Hope you found this interesting. This is probably the way I most frequently draw, and I think it's a great way of thinking. It's a great physical technique to use, and as I said, the key is holding your pen loosely and being confident with making fast marks, and the fact that it's smaller helps us to do that, the fact that the lines are shorter. So why not get the reference from my community page and give it a go. But look, whatever you draw, however you draw it, make sure you have fun. I'll see you next time. Bye.